What is good and what is up, y'all? It's your boy here, Jay, back and better than ever with another episode of Padres Banter. The Padres have been on somewhat of a tear since we have last chatted, even though splitting their series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, going ahead and winning their last series against the Houston Astros at home. Now turn around and face the Brew Crew, who head into San Diego, looking to take this series in San Diego before we head on a 6-game road trip. But the trade line has come and gone. Robbie Ray is the key piece and the key addition to this starting rotation of the Padres. So we'll see what happens. Even though the first start wasn't great, I know the rest won't be as bad as the first one. But all that being said, let's get right into it on this episode of Padres Banter. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Padres Banter. It has been a minute, but let's get right into it because the Padres have been on somewhat of a tear. It's been a couple weeks, but the Padres have played some relatively good baseball. Something that I've been complaining about with consistency about how they're playing, and it's starting to, come into fruition about the consistency of play and the want and the desire. And I think that the Padres are starting to have that. Even if Craig Stammen is making the wrong decisions here, I still see different with the players and what they're doing out there on the field, and I feel like they're having a little bit more effort. They're having a little bit more fight, and I love to see it, especially since we didn't sell at the deadline. That's not what AJ Preller did. And I think a lot of people and a lot of outsiders were thinking, well, this team is not good and the Padres are going to look to sell here. Well, I'm glad we didn't, and I'm glad that we put our foot, you know, where our mouth is because of the fact that we went out in years prior and got, key acquisitions, key pieces to try and build for the future, to try and go to win a World Series, and not build for the future, but ship off our future to build to try and get a World Series, and that just didn't happen. And so the point of that is that everybody thinks that we're just gonna continue to, try and sell now and try and reboot, maybe even ship off all our great pieces that we got. And I think that AJ said no. I did this for a reason. Maybe it hasn't panned out, but I'm still gonna continue to roll with the guys we got because I think that we can win with the guys we got. And I think that that's what you need. And so let's get right into it here on this episode of Padres Banter because we got a lot to chat about. But since we have last chatted, the Padres went on a roll, but in the last couple of series mellowed out just a tad, even though splitting their last series, and then went ahead and won this last series, even though it felt, a little bit. It didn't feel like we didn't win the series. It just felt like a hard fought series. But the Padres also added some new depth to the rotation as well as some bats in the minors, and the team on the team already making instant contributions to the team's success. It's been a minute since we have last talked, so let's get all right into it in this episode of Padres Banter. The trade deadline is now over and done, and the Pods made some key acquisitions for the team and their depth, already making key contributions, but the Padres didn't do anything flashy, more things of need, and didn't sell. Didn't sell, and that's the biggest part about this whole trade deadline. But the Pods went ahead and traded for left-handed pitcher Robbie Ray from the San Francisco Giants. In the trade, the Padres gave up Miguel Mendez, their 4th overall prospect, and Yaniel Hernandez, their 9th overall prospect, in order to get Robbie Ray, a former Cy Young pitcher, and a left-handed pitcher, a thing the Padres need bad in their starting rotation. The Padres also snagged infielder Gage Workman and Casey Mize, right-handed pitcher, 4 left-handed pitchers, Cash Mayfield and Jackson Wolf, sent to the Detroit Tigers, a solid starter for the Padres and some infield depth, which they also are in dire need for right here in this, in this back end of the season. And last but not least, the Padres went ahead and snagged Austin Hayes, a catcher off waivers, recently played for the White Sox and instantly hits a homer in last night's game versus the Astros. But before we get ahead of ourselves, it was solid and efficient trade deadline, but nothing flashy. Now, let's get into a little recap of how we got to this exact point and what the future holds. But I'm excited for all of the pieces that we went ahead and snagged. Yes, they haven't necessarily, Robbie Ray's start wasn't the best, and Casey Mize start wasn't the best, and that doesn't necessarily, make you excited about what the future holds. But at the end of the day, I know that their starts are not going to be as bad as their first ones, and I hope and pray that they're not. I hope and pray that they're not. But let's get into a little recap of how we got to this point because we've skipped a couple series, guys. We've skipped a couple series, and I usually only take 2 series in between my podcast, but had some time with family, and now it's back into the grind mode. But Miami, this was the series after Atlanta. After Atlanta, series, the Pods would head to Miami and hand the struggling Marlins a 3-game sweep, 4-2, 7-2, and 5-3 as the Padres bats woke up. Merrill with a 3-hit performance, Manny with some clutch home runs to round out the month of July. Not to mention our MVP, I think, of this year in the back half of this year, Ty France having a stellar back end of the year as the Padres would roll the fish. Now on to Colorado. Now a familiar foe for the Padres and the Colorado Rockies, who also seem to give the Padres trouble, but the Padres would find a way to escape with a 2-game set sweep, back-to-back sweeps for the kids from San Diego, as they would win 8-7, 8-7, and 3-1 with help with Fernando Tatis having his first ever 5-for-5 game, all singles and 2 RBIs. Manny with a clutch hits continuing in this series as well in the back end of July. Merrill starting to heat up and camp in X with big at-bats and productive outs behind some solid pitching from the Padres to sweep a 2-game set versus their in-division foe, who always seem to give the Padres trouble. And now on to San Francisco as the Giants rolled into town, and the Pods would turn around at home and face off versus another in-division foe in the Giants in what seemed to be an up-and-down series, but not really, as the Padres would win 3 out of the 4 games versus the Giants after dropping the first game 4-1. 7-0 was game 2, 6-5 was game 3, and 5-4 was game 4. As ironically enough, Robbie Ray was the only pitcher who had a winning effort, and it was the first game of the series. Probably why we went out and got him. Probably why AJ went out and said, "Ooh, I want this guy, left-handed pitcher." But at the end of the day, it is what it is. But he was the only pitcher to win against us in that series. But probably why, like I said, we went out and got him. But the Padres bats continued to sizzle as Jackson Merrill had a clutch 2-run shot and multi-hit game. Manny stayed sizzling, not to mention a great bullpen game started by Bradley Rodriguez. Then a great outings by Buehler and Canning. Now on to Arizona, the Diamondbacks, who have the similar record and have been sizzling as of late and have really been competing. And to be honest, this is our biggest nemesis right now. Yes, it is the Dodgers, but Diamondbacks right now are a problem. Now on to the series that would mean something towards the end of the season, because these teams both had similar records, as the Padres would split the series versus the Diamondbacks, who are sizzling right now, creeping their way up. Pods would drop game 1 5-1, come back and win game 2 9-4, lose game 3 10-4, and come back and make sure not to lose the series. And in game 4 would win 5-1, thanks to the Padres bats finally waking up in game 4 and having 12 hits in a very crucial game 4, as this was a deciding game 4 to see who had the edge on the season series. Jackson Merrill and Ty France both had hell of a series. Both bats started to get hot, and seems like the confidence in their swings right now, you can tell through the television that their swings are very, very confident. Manny also stayed hot, but continued to try and get his average over 220. Right now it's sitting at 212, a career 275 hitter, but just probably one of his worst years. Not just probably, it's his worst year by far ever for average, but the home runs are there. And he also drove in 4 runs earlier in the season before game 4, as the Padres would be at 60-56 after that series of the Diamondbacks, heading into the Houston series. And now into the last series that we had just got out of, the Houston Astros. In game 1, the Padres would lose game 1 in Robbie Ray's debut, as the Padres Robbie didn't have his best stuff. Went 5 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 runs, 5 walks, 2 Ks and 92 pitches. Just could be better. Maybe a little bit nervous on a Friday City Connect night, but also got to be better with the bats, and didn't help Robbie Ray with the bats either, as Houston would out hit us 11-7, as Merrill had a triple late, but didn't matter, as the Pods went 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Game 2, the Padres would sneak away with a 3-2 win thanks to Merrill Madness solo bomb and an absolute gem by King after he settled down, giving up some runs. The Padres managed to come back, matching the hit totals, even going 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position, but Miller would come in and shut the door and win and force a rubber match against the Houston Astros. And now into the rubber match, the Padres would have a chance to go ahead and win the series against the Astros, and would take advantage of that, and convincingly with a bombshell, winning 7-2 with Sheets, Merrill, Tatis, and newly added newcomer Austin Hayes makes his contribution with an absolute bomb in his first at-bat as a Padre. And guess what? Versus left-handed pitching, who we brought him in for to hit against. What a pickup it was. I just I'm excited for it because obviously we need some left-handed hitting and especially some pop in the back end of our lineup. But backed behind a great start by Randy Vasquez, settling in after giving up 2 runs early. Now he looks back to form, and the Pods without hit the Astros 12-2 and kept the borderline MVP candidate Yordan Alvarez at bay. So just a fantastic series to go ahead and win, especially since the fact that Houston has been picking up the pace a little bit more and looking to win their division. But man, that was just I felt like good for the morale now going into the series against the Brewers, who have had our number and who have last series really just I felt like manhandled us. Now it's time to bring in the Brewers and see what we can do, and not to mention the fact that Luis Rengifo, that's his former team, so it's going to be interesting to see there. But overall, guys, good baseball being played, trade deadline's over, and now we can really focus on the baseball being played, right? And the countdown, whatever you want to say, I guess so. But at the end of the day, the trade deadline has, I think, a lot of people wanted us to go out and make big splashes. Number one, we didn't really have the room to do that, and number two, I don't think it was necessary to do that, to bring in somebody of a Francisco Lindor and make a big trade like that. I don't think that it was necessary. Not that it was ever on the board, but before the season started, a lot of people thought that the Padres were going to go out and make a big splash, whether it was a Francisco Lindor, whether it was a rumor of possibly bringing people back to the Padres, big bats, right? It does. Who knows, right? Not to mention the fact that everybody wanted Mason Miller. Once that happened, AJ Preller was like, "Look, if you want Mason Miller, everybody on your team is available. Your best player is available." And so, he made that very clear. And once that happened, I think people or teams started to back out because they knew how much that was going to affect their team. Because Mason Miller is that caliber of player. For a fact that once you get to him, that it's not going to be a loss. So you think about those types of scenarios, and you're happy that we were, not sellers and also not trying to go out and make the flashy move, but just very efficient, confident moves that hopefully propel us into the right direction for some good baseball in the future. Because right now we're playing good baseball. I'm just hoping that we get that good pitching from Robbie Ray and Casey Mize. Austin Hayes has already made his contribution. Let's see what Workman can do. But at the end of the day, guys, I think that we are in a prime position to try and make some wild card run. But like I've said before, I'm not really hopeful about what this season has to hold. I'm obviously hopeful of the team and what they can do and their luck that they have. But at the end of the day, just being a realist in what has happened in years prior, I'm not going to get, head over heels about what's happening with this team right now because this is expected. We should be winning games, and we should be winning games with confidence, and we should be winning series. And that should have been going on all year long. But at the end of the day, this is baseball, and I know year to year is different. But at the end of the day, it just needs to get better. And right now it's getting better, especially when we need to get better because this is a race. This is not a marathon anymore. This is a absolute sprint to the finish line. So we'll see what happens. But let's go ahead and get the standings up real quick before we go ahead and hop off this podcast. So in the division, we obviously got the Dodgers that are still leading. The Charge by 7.5 games over the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks are 7.5 games back at 63 and 56. Pods at 62 and 57. And then behind that is really a no-show. The Giants really have fell into the Colorado Rockies boat after what seemed to be a promising year, getting Luis Rise, getting Devers and Adames, and yeah, seemed to be a promising year, as I knew it was not going to be a promising year for the Giants only because of the fact that I just knew what was going to happen with a rookie manager. So that just happens. Now let's go into the wild card and see where we stand in the wild card right now. We obviously got the division leaders in the Brewers, the Braves, and the Dodgers. But then we got the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, and the Phillies sitting right now in the top 3 spots in the wild card at 69 and 50, 63 and 56, and 63 and 56. Diamondbacks and Phillies are tied, and right behind them are the Padres, 1 game back, 62 and 57. And like I said earlier, guys, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Padres had missed the playoffs this season, but the baseball that they've been playing lately, it obviously says that they want to play postseason baseball. But it's just frustrating that we see ourselves below the hash line right now, simply due to the fact that we are a better team than that. Right behind us are the Miami Marlins at 3 games back at 60-59. Then the Cardinals and the Nationals. And really, the only other two teams that are in contention are the Pirates and the Reds. But those are both 5.5 and 6 games back in the wild card. But guys, that is going to be a wrap of this episode. I'm so very excited to see what the rest of this future or rest of this season has to hold. I'll be continuing making these podcasts and honestly making them more frequently because of the fact that we are getting more sports in and it is not a dead period anymore. And I'm starting to have more time to hopefully do these things and make sure that I'm not working all the time. So I want to focus on this more, and that's what I'm going to be doing. But at the end of the day, guys, I'm also focused on what this Padres team has got going. But like I said, now the Pods face off against the Brew Crew at home before heading on a 6 game road trip to Cleveland and New York to face off the Mets. But both are winnable and very competitive environments to play in. But the first, we got the Brew Crew who handled us the first time we faced off against them. Luis Rengifo, old team like I had mentioned. Interesting match to say the least. But let's stay tuned, guys. I'm now back locked into the Pods and what they have on the rest of the season, like I had said. But let's see what they can do. Fire, faithful, stand up, and see y'all soon. We out.